Hi, good evening. On day 86 of our 99 days, it's getting later and later for me, nearly 12 o'clock, nearly midnight, I should say. Um, the topic of today is a request from one of you. So, in the extreme version, I'm sure, and I'm sure that it's not applicable to all of you. But in lighter versions, I think we all have dealt with this in one way or the other. And the topic is about power play. So when we have the feeling that someone else has power over you. And um, well, the most clear and all-inclusive feeling you have when someone else has power over you is this feeling of powerless, feeling literally all your power is literally taken away by that other person. And it's intense feeling of not being able to do anything. It literally is taken out of your hands, at least that's how it feels. And that's also exactly what the other person is trying to do. And today I only want to talk about power play of individuals to individuals, not about groups or systems who are overpowering us. I just want to more put it down to, or narrow it down to, individuals playing this game. And the paradox in this is that the victim who feels this power play as getting into this state of not being able to do anything, actually the person who plays power is actually also so powerless that he or she uses power to get some control. And it always helps in going through an awakening process to see more perspectives, even how difficult it is. Because when injustice is done to you, it's so hard to see the other person's position. But to get out of your feeling helpless, which is a very low frequency, as I shared before, it's like this: you're literally the victim then of the play that's happening. When you are pushed or pulled into that state, you literally give your power away, so the other person has actually the freedom to do it. And then you might say, well, it's not that easy. It's not that I literally don't have anything to do because he or she is using things I cannot, or I don't want to give away. Or let's say it is an example of a divorce, because it happens a lot of time when people divorce. Then one of the two isn't agreeing with the divorce, or feels so angry, or feels so left alone, or feels well, whatever the reason for a divorce is, but he or she feels actually that he was put in a position he or she didn't want to be put in. So, and this is actually the perpetrator who's doing the power play. But when he or she gets out of that divorce and going into the ending of the relationship, and when you have to negotiate, or when you have to really separate things, then a person who feels that a lot of things has done to him or her, I'm just going to continue with he because that's so much easier in my talk. Then he will uses his last resort actually to gain or to hold on to something. And often he then feels that the other party, so the other partner, is actually often having a better life, or has made a choice to divorce, and so he feels the victim as well. And then you get this interesting play of it's obviously it's not a play because it's a very hurtful thing, but you get this dynamic of actually um, not being able to come closer to each other and see each other's pain. And that's actually what needs to be done. And you cannot always do that together because it's too painful or too difficult, or the situation has gotten so worse that you can't even talk to each other anymore. But from a distance, you can still try to embrace that pain of the other person. And even if you might have tried it and nothing is changing directly, it still helps to soften yourself. Because the only thing which is not working is trying to react in the same frequency. So reacting in a frequency of victim or conflict, so these lower frequencies, what actually is happening when someone else has power over you, then you become the victim. Or you get into conflict because you get so angry and feel so defenseless that you really want to fight back. But that's actually only feeding the fire more. So what really helps is to get out of that position emotionally. This really needs to be done at an emotional level, not by the mind. You really need to feel that you want to get out of these lower frequencies and get into a neutral state. I mean, I'm not expecting to get you in a loving state, but get in a neutral state and become very clear about what you want to get out of this situation. Because I assume here it's out of it. You have to get out of a conflict situation if someone plays power over you. If it's happening in a long relationship and it's continuing and you can't get out of it, so you might not have gotten to a divorce yet or separation or whatever, then of course you still have a decision to make. But if you're like ending a relationship and this comes up while divorcing, then the person who feels the victim here, and so who's victimized here by the other person being very irrational in his or her talking, or being very irrational in how to divide things, then you as the other party has to become very, very clear what you want or what you don't want and stay put there. But don't give in on anything. So what often happens is the person who plays power can become very forceful in a certain situation when, for instance, there is a discussion going on. And then he or she uses what he has to get power over you. And in other moments, he or she might soften and be kind and looks like, oh, no, it's quite okay. So now we can talk normally. And that's actually when you kind of give in and only give more power to the other person. Because that's actually the psychopathical way which is behind this power play. Because the only thing that person wants is to use that power not to feel his or her pain. So he uses whatever mechanism to get hold of over you in any area, not just the area where you have the conflict, but also in other areas. So the wisest thing to become as neutral as possible in any situation, in any confrontation, in any talk, in any interaction. Not become indifferent, because that's also actually a quite low frequency, because you're really stepping out of it, and that makes the other person only feel more like, okay, now I have to use more power and more power and more power. So you don't want to feed the power anymore. That's actually the essence. You want to radiate a frequency that is caring in a way without being sympathetic. So you want to care, but not like looking down on the other person, which easily happens because you lose the respect in all sides. So, but you don't want to look down on the other person because that doesn't help either. But you do want to have this unconditional little care and not become indifferent, but more like the state of, well, you cannot hurt me anymore. I'm okay with who I am. I'm okay with the decision that has been made, or I'm okay with the status I'm in, or I'm okay with the position I'm in, and I'm going to move forward. But I don't allow you to play power over me. That has to be so strongly in every cell. I don't allow you to play power over me. You really must feel that in every single cell in your being. And you need softness for that. Softness and a solidness. It's like this combination of, it's so hard to put words to it. You can only sense it. So it's really important to become very aligned with yourself, like we have practiced in these 99 days. And that's actually as neutral as you can get, because it's completely understandable that there's no love in that moment. But you can have full love for yourself. You can fully love yourself as much as you can, as open as you can. If you really know that you haven't done anything wrong, then you can fully love yourself for what has happened, and that you want to do your best, but don't let the other person cross your boundaries, because that is not self-love. And most of the time, people play power over someone else after a long relationship, or, I mean, it doesn't happen in week one most of the time, unless you're really dealing with a psychopath. But most of the time, it just is gradually happening over time, and so there has already been a huge dynamic in the past, which is actually where there is this definition of roles and definition of emotions that's already been going on for many years. And then it switches when well, either there is separation or there is a huge conflict, into one going into full power and control, and the other one feels relieved of being able to get out of that relationship, but at the same time is tied because decisions have to be made, or, well, the separation has to be done. So to help yourself, it really, really, really helps to nourish yourself, to be very love and kind to yourself and the people close to you who are involved in this, but not directly. And be soft to the other person who plays power over you. And I hope you can receive that, because I understand that that's very difficult. Especially if you're like, feel like you are with your back against the wall and you only want to fight back, or feel really sorry for yourself for the situation you're in, because you think you haven't done anything wrong. And you most likely haven't done anything wrong. But that's but you're not going to win that. If someone else uses power that strongly, you're never going to win it in a justice way. So yeah, so to be really aligned with yourself and know what you want out of it, the minimum at least, and be very clear, and don't use too many words in conversations or in dialogue, or when you have to meet the other. Don't use more than necessary, and And try to become very aware of what you radiate. That's why this alignment is so important, because someone else can only have power over you if you let that person overpower you. And that overpowering, or I don't know if it's overpowering in English, but that can only happen if you are showing weakness inside of you. And this is happening this is really happening on an energetic frequency level. A very simple example is that animals react in this way to other animals. I mean, if an animal is frightened, then the dominant animal overpowers or shows power play to the frightened one. But if an animal is really self-assured and confident, then the dominant animal doesn't have to play this power. It's just simply not necessary, so it's not happening. So this alignment, therefore, is important, and being clear on what you want, and try not to understand this with the mind, why it's happening. Try to see if you can open your heart as much as possible. Most of all towards yourself. But even also to the other person. Try to let go as much resentment as you can. Because the resentment is only creating more resistance. And you want to avoid all resistance you can, but you don't want to give in on your part of the deal. So it's a tricky balance. It really is a tricky balance, but it is played out in your energy, in your radiance, how you look, if you don't feel confident, it shows. And the other one picks it up, and then it hits your weak spot immediately. And if it hits your weak spot immediately, then be honest and just share, I feel really hurt here. And then go back into alignment and try to raise your frequency again as much as possible, at least into a neutral position where you feel the love for yourself as much as possible. And in preparations, or to prepare yourself for conversations like this is, whatever helped you in these 99 days or before, to embrace yourself and to align with yourself. Do that before these meetups, and avoid any other contact as much as possible. So what I said before, like, don't give in on things that seem little to you, in the sense that so it's difficult to make this very clear. So you most of the time you have the big arguments where the power is played most out, and then you have the little things that seem less important, but they're also played out in the same energy, but from a more kindness coming from that same person. Like, okay, I'm now the kind one giving in to you, so look at me, how kind I am. And then the next moment, he or she plays the power again. So key is here that you are as consistent as possible. And don't fall into the trap of feeling sympathy for this moment of softening of the other person. Here, it's a huge difference between showing sympathy and empathy. And I'm not going to explain that now, because I had a session on this. But sympathy here will make the other person feel very weak. And empathy is more an honest, sincere feeling of love, even if as little as it is, but it's a feeling of love. Sympathy is a feeling of love, but it's always looking down upon the other person, and you don't want to have that. So And I haven't had time actually to really go into the little place of power. Because I haven't endured in a very intense way. But I know exactly the feeling about power play when it happens very subtle. And it's very... So what I learned most about those plays is that you're going back and forth. You feel like you're like a puppet on a string, and the other person can pull the strings. And sometimes you feel like, okay, now it's okay, and then the next moment you're pulled outside of your balance again. And clarity and being very strict and very clear about what you want is key. It's absolutely key. And not giving in on the softer, weaker moments. Yeah, so well, I hope this helps. If more questions come up, then let me know or connect to me in person. Because if it's really specific, it might be too much to share upon here. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, which obviously is coming strongly from duality and from our pains in general, and from our fears. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's it for today, and I'll see you back tomorrow. Okay.